Today, we're looking at something really quite extraordinary. Not just a philosophy, but, well, a world that seems to have successfully rebuilt itself from the ground up.
That's a great way to put it. We're diving into some really intense, fascinating source material here. Foundational writings from Benoit Nunilly-Pierre.
Right, and the focus is this. This project in Kenba District, Sierra Leone, it sounds incredibly radical.
It is. They call it a post-colonial neoculturation project. And it's built around something called the double transversal transjective quadratic model, or T for short.
Okay.
And this isn't just theory on paper. The sources claim this is the actual operating system for how things work there right now.
So it's a living example. And the sources describe it as this fusion of, well, it seems like everything: computer science, theology, architecture, politics.
All rolled into one functional system. They call it the living flat metabolism. It's a mouthful, but it captures that interconnectedness.
And the core mechanism, the thing that really jumps out, is how they're doing it. It's linguistic, isn't it?
Precisely. This is maybe the most crucial takeaway for you, the listener. They're engaged in this deliberate process, etymological hybridization. They're literally inventing new words.
Inventing words to
Right.
debug reality.
Kinda, yeah. To debug the ghost code left by empire, as Nunilly-Pierre puts it. It's about actively rewiring the foundations of their reality through language.
So our mission today, really, is to try and decode this. It's hyper-complex. The jargon is intense.
It really is.
We need to figure out how coining terms, like what were some of them? Joy entropy, covenant of physics. How does that actually lead to tangible change on the ground in Kenema?
That's the challenge. And Kenema itself, the way Nunilly-Pierre frames it, it's not just a place to study. It's a construction site and cosmic studio.
A cosmic studio. I like that.
Yeah. The community there, Kenema they call it, they're actively compiling a new world. And crucially, they're rejecting the usual metrics, the narratives you get from traditional NGOs.
The deficit models.
Exactly. They're aiming for something different.
Yes.
A joyful, Afro-optimist future. And it's forged, quite literally, in sweat, in the syntax they create, and in their solidarity.
Okay, so let's dive in. This ontological engineering insurgency. Where do we even start? To understand the engineering, I guess we need the foundation, the philosophy behind it all.
That's the right place to start, the bedrock. So the insurgency, as they call it, it really begins with a diagnosis of the colonial wound. And they argue it goes much, much deeper than just, stealing land or resources.
Right. You mentioned that ghost code idea. It's about a cognitive theft, something systemic.
Exactly. It's not just that colonialism took stuff. It imposed a structure, a vertical hierarchy onto thought itself. Nunilly-Pierre says it rewired language itself, leaving whole people's thinking in imported categories.
So that ghost code is like the hidden assumptions, that power flows down, that some things are just better than others, that history starts with the colonizer.
Precisely those implicit biases baked into the system. And if the root problem is ontological, if it's about the very way people understand what is real, what exists, then the fix has to be just as fundamental.
Which leads to this idea of post-unconscious colonial ontology engineering. It sounds like aggressive reprogramming.
Well, they'd argue it's a necessary radical step. You can't just patch the old system. You have to compile completely new firmware, so to speak. Ontology engineering means you're actively writing new language, new systems.
Not just to describe reality, but to actively change it.
To redefine what exists and how things relate. Language stops being a passive mirror. It becomes the active motor, the engine driving the compilation of this new reality.
I have to say the ambition is staggering. They're not pulling any punches.
Not at all. And the core principle guiding all this compiling is flatness. They call it Afro-flat theopoetics.
Okay, flatness. My first thought is, well, boring, uniform. But that's not what they mean, is it?
Not even close. It's the kinetic opposite of dullness, actually. Flat here means ontological parity. Active, joyous equality. Nunilly-Pierre describes it almost like a riotous festival declaring total war on the state empire of hierarchy and boredom.
So it's a philosophical commitment to erasing verticality, getting rid of the up-down power structures.
Yep, and they have a specific target for that. The boss-no imperative.
The boss-no imperative. What does that entail?
It's the command that must be annihilated. It represents all those entrenched vertical power structures. Color power, racial hierarchy, money power, economic dominance, manpower, gender, or physical hierarchy, and old power, rigid tradition or unquestioned authority based on age.
So obliterate all of that.
That's the goal. The core belief is non-negotiable. Every single entity, everything that exists has equal swagger. It has the right and the responsibility to co-create the world moment by moment.
And when they say co-create, they mean everything, not just people.
Oh, absolutely. They're very literal about this. It's the mango, the moonlight, God, the concrete block, the electrical voltage in the wire, the air itself. Everything shares the same ontological frequency, the same right to participate.
Wow. That's radical immanentism, right? Flattened toe theology.
Exactly. The divine isn't upstairs somewhere, separate. It's woven into the fabric of existence. It's in the circuitry of every nail hammered, every pulse of life, every humble amper of trust, as they put it.
An emperor of trust.
Yeah, if something exists, it's part of the metabolism. The divine energy travels horizontally through kinship, through the touch of artisans. That's why building things, physical labor, becomes a theological act.
Okay, that fundamental shift flattening the whole existential playing field, that must change everything, especially how they think about knowledge. Which brings us to this rejection of Western academic norms, non-auto-anthropology.
Yes, this is a really direct, almost aggressive refusal of the colonial gaze, the traditional way of studying cultures.
The detached observer.
Right. Traditional ethnography assumes the researcher can stand outside, observe, analyze, extract data. Katamagora says no. That detachment itself reintroduces the verticality of the subject observing the object.
Because if the flat principle is true, then truth happens only through familial recognition and shared sweat. You can't be detached and claim to know something authentically.
That's their profound thesis. Observer equals observed equals metabolism. You don't study kinema. You metabolize with it. You become part of its ongoing creation. The knowledge isn't extracted. It's a byproduct of doing things together.
And the example they use for this is Miriam, the construction worker. The critique mentioned needing more detail here.
Yes, it's a powerful illustration. Nouni Lapierre describes Miriam mixing sand and cement. Now, in a typical Western study, she's a data point, right? A woman in construction. Maybe note her efficiency, her technique.
That's an object of study.
But in Katamagora, she is the research apparatus. Her physical effort, her fatigue, the sound her trowel makes, the rhythm of her breathing. These are the instruments of inquiry. Knowledge isn't in a book. It's built by doing things together, repeatedly, until the body itself remembers the truth.
That's the sum-of-plate continuum idea, body and material becoming intertwined.
Exactly. The body is like soft stone. The stone remembers the body's effort. Her muscle memory is the verifiable data. It knows the perfect consistency for the mortar, not from a ratio in a manual, but from the feel, the smell, the sound, the weight. That embodied memory, achieved through shared effort, is the ultimate verification.
So if some academic flew in, watched Miriam, wrote a paper on mortar consistency without ever getting their hands dirty, that paper would be considered, what, invalid?
Worse than invalid. It's irrelevant. It's colonial ghost code. It lacks the ontological grounding of shared embodied experience. The only valid knowledge comes from that metabolizing with.
Okay, so they reject external observation, Western metrics, even peer review as just another hierarchy. How do they know if their system is working? How do they measure success?
They measure grace. They measure covenant. They quantify it almost like an electrical current. Verification uses trust dampers, symbol text spurs.
Trust dampers, like social voltage.
That's a good way to think about it. High tech spurs means the covenant circuit is healthy. The community is breathing together. Promises are kept. The repair work is flowing. Things are working.
And low-tech spur, how do they detect that? Is it like someone does a survey?
No, it's kinetic. It's sensory. It's felt. Low-tech spring, which could be colonial interference or maybe internal betrayal. Broken trust, it manifests as a tangible stiffness, a disruption in the communal rhythm.
Like people not breathing together during work?
Exactly. That Pomelung symphony they talk about fails. Or there's an awkward silence in the shade circle where conversation usually flows easily. Or maybe a tool breaks because the person responsible didn't maintain it properly, breaking the shared responsibility. It's when the joy starts to dim in the collective work.
So the only real peer review is?
The one who helps carry sand. Verification is an abstract assessment. It happens through pierced hearts, through shared vulnerability, shared endurance, shared sweat.
I see. The truth test is immediate, physical, applied. If your big idea can't withstand the rainy season, or if your doctrine falls apart when you're carrying a heavy load, it has low-tech style, it's suspect.
That's it. It's the ultimate epistemology of apprenticeship. Knowledge has to prove itself through durability, through resonance, through its capacity for repair. Theory and practice have to be utterly fused.
Okay, so if Afro-flat theopoetics is the foundational philosophy, the kind of constitution declaring this radical equality, then the delta T22 model, this double transversal transjective quadratic thing, That's the engine, the mechanism running the living flat metabolism.
Precisely. It's the blueprint for how things actually work, how they act. Nuni Lapierre describes it as part philosophy, yeah, but also part physics, part practical community engineering. And the key thing, functionally, is that it avoids hierarchy. It's designed to act like a DJ's crossfader, maybe, or a living engine that refuses the pyramidic fantasy of control. You can't command it from the top down.
Right. Okay, let's spend some real time breaking this down. The name itself, double transversal transjective quadratic. We need to unpack those components. Let's start with transversal. What does that mean in this context?
Transversal means it cuts across. It's the force ensuring nothing gets siloed off. It cuts across physical borders, sure, but more importantly, conceptual borders.
So theology has to connect to engineering. The body's feeling has to connect to architectural design.
Exactly. The flow of influence is horizontal, side to side. Every element has to penetrate other domains. You can't have siloed thinking. If you're designing a building, you must be thinking transversally about the covenant it represents, the social relations it enables, and the structural load.
If one aspect dominates, say, just the engineering, then you get hierarchy again, and the model stalls.
It stalls. It demands that systemic harmony, that horizontal flow, which leads into the next term, transjective. This seems like the really crucial ontological move, fusing subject and object. It is. This is where the observer and the observed become functionally inseparable. The observer doesn't just watch the world. Nuni Lapierre says he metabolizes with it.
So, okay, transversal, transjective, and quadratic.
Agree.
That implies cycles, rhythm, maybe expansion, not linear progress.
Exactly. Quadratic suggests that rhythmic doubling, cycles, stability achieved through constant dynamic movement. It rejects that Western linear march of history towards some fixed endpoint. And there's that formula they use, which is wild.
Right, the delta T2 times text ethico immanence equation.
Yeah. It basically formalizes the idea that existence is reciprocity squared. Text ethico immanence prax u. You take action, text praxiosis, and the inherent moral truth found within the system, text ethico immanence. You multiply that by joy.
Joy as a multiplier.
As a necessary multiplier. And that whole product has to constantly overcome the system's natural tendency towards decay, minus the corrosive effect of indifference or lack of care.
That is probably the most ambitious equation for running a society I've ever heard of. It explicitly makes joy an engineering variable, a critical one.
It has to be. Without sufficient joy, the system mathematically collapses. Joy is the kinetic lubricant, the energy source that keeps that rhythmic quadratic doubling going. And that rhythm is maintained by these four axial rotations within the model.
Okay, let's map these out. You said they aren't a hierarchy, but circulating vectors, working together to achieve, what was the term? Flat trisohomeorhythm.
Flat rhizohomeorhythm.
Yeah.
A steady, root-like, rhizomatic, self-regulating, homeostatic beat of reciprocal existence. It's about finding that sustainable collective pulse.
And the axes, they circulate, counterbalancing each other.
Right. They're duly labeled, reflecting this balance. If one gets too strong or too weak, the system uses the rotation to self-correct.
Okay, let's start with ultra. Sounds foundational, like the spark.
Ultra, faith ignition endurance method.
No.
This is the primary energy source. Think of it as the initial breath, the spark that lights the covenantal inferno. It generates what they call stamina org, the collective energy, the resilience of the group.
And it's rooted in belief.
Deeply. In an eschatological confidence, a radical belief that God wants happy, that the universe leans towards joyful thriving if we align with it. This is where worship directly transforms into productive energy, into fun holy or pray fun. It's the conviction that the upkeep, the maintenance, will succeed because it's aligned with destiny.
So ultra generates the energy, which then flows into
Extra. Civic kinship, reciprocal syntax.
Yes.
This is the social layer, where that faith energy gets channeled into practical communal action. Guilds, markets, coordinating shared labor. It's the together big mechanics, the social engineering part.
Building those community bonds.
Building kinfold bonds through shared action. Ensuring the joy generated in ultra spreads like happy blood, another one of their terms, throughout the whole community metabolism.
Okay, coordinating the work, then comes meta. This sounds like the reflection part.
Meta. Reflection coherence, feedback without confession.
Right.
But crucially, this reflection is never abstract or detached. It has to happen in the field. You think while mixing mud. Theory gets hammered out mid-rhythm during the work.
So the reflection has to smell of kinema.
Exactly. If the theory smells like it came from a university office somewhere else, it's rejected. It lacks ontological grounding. A mistake, like a bent nail, isn't a failure to confess. It's data. It's an argument revised. It feeds directly back into understanding the process better. It's the collective pursuit of happiness. It's about coherent adjustment, not blame.
And the final axis, grounding it all, intra.
Intra, embodiment interosection microphenomenology. This anchors the whole system in the physical body and the immediate environment, the soil. It focuses on the granular details, the pressure of your breath, the specific sound a tool makes hitting wood, somadas, that fusion of the body's sweat and the earth.
This is where touch becomes knowledge.
Yes, through haptognosis, wisdom gained by touch, and palm praxis, ritualized touching of the earth or walls, connecting geology to genealogy, soil history to community memory. It ensures that the meta-reflection is always checked against and informed by the body's direct experience.
So it's intensely sensory, very present moment focused. And you mentioned the key is that these axes rotate, but not just in one direction. They have reverted and inverted rotation.
Yes, that's vital for balance and continuity. The flow isn't just ultra extra meta intra repeat. The system corrects and reinforces itself. Perhaps the most spiritually potent is the reverted awakening. The intra-axis, the embodied experience of soil repair, of physical work, flows back to recharge the ultra-axis, the faith ignition.
Wow. So the physical feeling Miriam has when she mixes the perfect mortar, that doesn't just build a wall extra, it actually strengthens the community's core belief system, ultra. The act of successful repair becomes the engine driving faith.
It's theology generated by sweat, embodied proof.
Yeah.
And this constant cycling, this embodied rhythm, it fundamentally changes how they govern themselves when you get into the details of this tactile governance.
Yeah, how does that phrase, whoever stirs well speaks next, actually translate into policy or decision making?
It's remarkably literal. Authority isn't fixed. It's distributed based on demonstrated commitment and somatic alignment with the group's rhythm, with the metabolism. Governance literally follows the sound of the mortar mixing.
We're kidding.
No, if someone is stirring erratically, if their movements are jerky or clearly self-absorbed, distracted, they're temporarily disqualified from offering counsel. Their input is deemed to have low text prayer because they're out of sync with the collective effort.
So your physical posture, your rhythm, becomes a kind of democratic indicator.
And the environment votes, too. Laws are meteorological. They recognize that clear thinking is difficult under intense sun or stress. So the show doctrine isn't just about rest, it's a legislative principle. When the wind dies down or the heat becomes oppressive and demands rest, formal deliberation pauses. The soil's condition matters if it's too net for certain work. Discussions have to shift towards maintenance, not new projects. Policy emerges organically from these repair rituals, from conversations in the shade circles, where the body's state, the collective rhythm, and the weather are primary factors.
This metabolic rhythm, it must also completely change their relationship with time, right? You mentioned the shade doctrine and also radical unschooling.
Absolutely. The shade doctrine is a direct assault on what they call the colonial syndrome, the tyranny of the clock, the relentless pressure for productivity imposed by Western models. They refuse to see time as just a linear resource to be mined.
Instead, they tune into natural rhythms.
They synchronize human effort with vegetal flow, with the sun's commands. Rest isn't idleness, it's a theological necessity. It's storing potential energy, storing joy, preparing for the next cycle, the next rainfall. What Western metrics might call wasted time is, for them, essential for covenantal physics.
And this rhythm gets embedded from birth through radical unschooling.
Learning starts in the womb, within that shared body infrastructure, the somoplite matrix. There are no school bells, no desks, no artificial subject divisions. The core pedagogy is the breathnet pedagogy.
Breathnet pedagogy.
It's the slow, deliberate entrainment of respiration between kin, between mentor and child. Learning is fundamentally about breathing in unison, establishing that flat trizo homeorhythm in the young members of the community.
So education isn't about facts memorized, but about achieving somatic synchrony with the community and environment. If a child can't sync their breath with the rhythm of the work happening nearby, they're considered behind.
In a fundamental way, yes.
Yeah.
Because they haven't integrated into the communal metabolism.
Yeah.
Infancy itself is seen as kin-win creatio creation happening through relational rhythm. Play is research. That image of children rolling in the red dust, that's neuroflat pedagogy in action.
Learning balance, joy, the feel of the earth.
All at once. They're learning the texture of their shared genealogy, the joy of movement, the basics of covenantal belonging. The rhythm of the evening fire isn't just ambiance. It's a lesson in circadian theology, rest and rhythm as acts of rebellion against frantic acceleration.
The whole tie system feels incredibly holistic, but you said it needs fuel, and that fuel is this engineered language.
Right. This section gets to the absolute core of the insurgency. Remember the diagnosis. Colonialism rewired language itself. So the only way out is a systematic, engineered counter-rewiring. Kenamagora actively refuses to use imported concepts, especially those that carry hidden hierarchies.
And this is where etymology becomes carpentry comes in. Language isn't just descriptive, it's constructive. Speaking is building.
Exactly. Their tool for this is the hyperorganon lexicon. It's described as having a dual function. It's a compiler translating this new ontological code into usable forms, and it's also like a cathedral celebrating that new reality.
A linguistogenetic hyperobject, that's quite a term.
It means the words themselves are seen as living agents, active participants in the metabolic dialogue. They carry that that trust ampere charge.
And the method for creating these words, diasemionic splicing, how does that actually work? Is it just jamming words together?
It's more sophisticated than that. It's a linguistic fusion driven by utility and, importantly, by joy. They take African root words, often from local Sierra Leonean languages, capturing concepts of kinship or spirit, and they splice them with very precise scientific or technical terms, morphemes from physics, computing, engineering,
And then add love.
and then infuse the whole thing with a sense of covenant, of love, of relationality. The result has to be a kind of phonetic sculpture that functions like software. It needs to immediately start healing the world operating system by recoding its syntax in joy.
Okay, we absolutely need to spend time on some examples. These hybridized terms are wild. Let's go beyond just listing them and explore their function within the UT model. Start with covenantophysics.
Covenantophysics. Okay, this is where the ultra-axis faith ignition directly meets physics. It's Newton meets Noah, essentially. The core principle is that a vow, a binding promise made within the community, isn't just a social agreement. It functions like measurable electrical voltage.
Seriously, measurable.
That's the claim. If the vow is kept, the circuit conducts light-high text. If the vow is broken, the voltage drops, the circuit dims or goes dark. This provides the technical basis for their repair continuity index. Betrayal isn't just a feeling, it's a quantifiable drop in the system's structural integrity, which they believe becomes visible in the community's overall output and resilience.
So a promise is literally a load-bearing element in their world. If enough promises break, the walls might actually start to crumble, metaphorically and maybe even literally.
That's the radical implication. It makes faith entirely empirical, directly relevant to physical construction and community well-being. Okay, next, consider grace tensor.
The description was, Einstein prays in metrics. How does grace function like a tensor, stretching without snapping?
Well, in physics, a tensor describes complex relationships between vectors, how things stretch or deform under stress, right? In Kenamagora, grace isn't passive forgiveness. It's defined as the structural integrity of the relationship itself, its ability to withstand stress, internal contradictions, external pressures, the constant drag of entropy.
So grace is the system's elasticity.
Exactly. It's the capacity of the ET model, the community fabric, to absorb errors, even betrayals, without shattering the fundamental relational bonds. It's what keeps the whole thing stable when one axis, say meta-reflection, falters for a bit. It ensures structural resilience in the face of imperfection.
That reframes grace completely. Not divine pardon, but essential social structural engineering. Okay? And the one that flips a negative concept. Joy entropy.
This is such a radical rereading. Normally, entropy is bad news, right? The universe running down, disorder increasing, heat death. Kenamagora acknowledges decay is real fatigue, things breaking, aging, but they argue it can be transmuted, turned into something positive through gratitude and shared purpose. It becomes disorder that giggles while glowing.
How does that work practically? How does a tired muscle emit surplus light?
When the labor is done with high text, in sync, the physical exhaustion isn't just lost energy. It's immediately metabolized by the community into what they call surplus light, or photonic gratitude. The energy Miriam expends mixing mortar is transformed into a stronger bond with her kinfold, which in turn boosts the collective stamina org.
So the decay isn't wasted.
It's converted into social kinetic energy, into relational strength. It effectively replaces Marx's idea of surplus value with surplus grace. All labor, even exhausting labor, enriches the relational fabric if done with the right intention and synchrony.
That is, wow, a complete inversion. And this fusion of body and action is also in terms like haptognosis and palm praxis, right? From the intra-axis.
Absolutely. Haptognosis is simply wisdom gained through touch, the kind of knowledge you can only get by physically handling materials, tools, the earth. knowing the history of a hammer by its feel. Palm praxis is more ritualized, the deliberate act of placing your hand on the soil, on a wall, consciously connecting the geology beneath you with the genealogy of the community, converting place into lineage through touch.
It constantly pulls abstract thought back to the physical, embodied reality.
It's the verification loop. Meta-reflection must always be testable by intrasensation. And the ultimate test for all this incredible new language, this complex system, it's surprisingly fun. The humor protocol.
Right, the language has to work, not just sound impressive, and it has to survive the village.
Yes, this is Play Soda, the philosophy of reparative laughter. Humor isn't just incidental, it's the system's thermostat, preventing dogma from overheating, keeping things grounded.
How does the laughter test actually function?
It's their ultimate empirical check on the compiled ontology. The rule is straightforward. If a concept, expressed in one of these new hybrid terms, can generate genuine shared laughter across different generations and maybe even local language groups, then the underlying ontological insight is considered sound, resonant.
So if a term like grace tensor or covenantal physics becomes too stiff, too academic, too self-important, that it can't survive a bit of village teasing or a clever pun?
Then the term fails peer review. It has to be revised or maybe even discarded. The system is deliberately designed to resist taking itself too seriously, because seriousness can be a precursor to hierarchy. Laughter is the metric that ensures relational flow, honesty, and humility.
So this etymological hybridization isn't just wordplay, it's the living engine of neoculturation. Speaking this new reality, laughing about it, arguing in it, that's how they actively build and repair their world.
To speak is to repair. That's the essence of it.
Okay, so we have the philosophy, the AT model, and we have the linguistic engine, the hyperorganon. Now we get to the concrete proof, the physical manifestation, the Kenamagora mansion. This 3,400 square foot building isn't just a house, it's the living laboratory where this all comes together.
Exactly. It's described as a cathedral computer, an ontocosmic manastone. The architecture itself is intended to be part of the system, a piece of trance architecture that actively participates in modulating consciousness and calibrating the community.
A building that tunes the people inside it. Let's talk about the architectural liturgy. How does theology literally become a building material?
It's embedded in the practices. Maintenance is mercy. The act of building is praise. The design itself reflects the AT. For example, the walls aren't just walls. They're defined as stamenorgic interfaces. They physically conduct the community's trust levels.
Conduct trust.
Yes, and even something usually seen as negative, like humidity inside a building, is reframed, becomes a covenantal current. High humidity might be interpreted not just as dampness, but as a sign of fluctuating trust. A covenantal humidity translating into ontic current. The house literally breathes with the community's promises. High harmony means a stable, healthy house. Failing trust might manifest as perceived corrosion or instability.
That's incredible. What about mistakes during construction? Things inevitably go wrong.
Mistakes aren't hidden or punished in the typical sense. They become liturgies of learning. A bent nail isn't waste. It's treated as an argument revised. It immediately triggers reflection on the meta-axis. Why did it bend? Was the force wrong? Was the focus off? Was there a lapse in the covenantal physics?
So they analyze the mistake to understand the breakdown in the system, both physical and social.
And then they repair both simultaneously. This feeds directly into that core concept of labor as worship and specifically maintenance as salvation.
That phrase is powerful. It shifts salvation from a future event to a present ongoing action, continuous repair.
Right. They aren't focused on dissecting the past traumas of colonialism, the ghosts. They're busy compiling new firmware, laying new bricks. Salvation is achieved and demonstrated through repair continuity. Can the community maintain its tools, its structures, its relationships fluidly, generation after generation? That is salvation.
And this intense mindful labor, it's also framed as a form of healing. Exopsychoanalytic onto engineering. Therapy by trowel.
That's a great summary. The idea is that colonial trauma, these internal scars, that gross code of repression and hierarchy. The ET system, through its emphasis on physical labor within the community, forces an externalization of the unconscious. You work through the trauma by physically renovating the world around you.
So the walls become dream catchers. Plaster seals memory leaks.
Those are the metaphors used. Collective grief or anger isn't just talked about, it's channeled into the physical effort of building or repairing. It gets purified through shared action. Freud diagnosed repression, Kenamagora prescribes renovation.
So collective emotion gets transformed.
Through metabolvin, which is love converted into kinetic repair energy, that grief or anger is processed and ideally released as joy entropy, strengthening the community. But this requires deep embodiment, intra-re-embodiment. The team has to function almost like a single organism.
Which brings us back to the breathing, the pulmonan symphony and breath-net calibration. Tell me more about how that works daily.
It's a core practice rooted in the intra-axis. Before starting major collective labor, the team performs a brief, maybe 5-minute silent breath-net calibration. Everyone focuses on synchronizing their respiration.
Creating that pulmonan symphony.
Yes. If they achieve that unison, that shared rhythm, it's taken as a sign that morale is stable, the group is aligned, and the work will likely be productive breath. If the breathing feels chaotic, disjointed, they don't force it. The team might disperse for individual reflection or quiet conversation until that somatic alignment can be reestablished.
They're literally using collective breath as a project management tool, as a go-no-go signal.
It's fundamental. The body is the primary liturgical instrument, and it needs to be tuned to the key of collective endurance and shared purpose. Even the tools become extensions of this. Hammers are said to carry psalms in their dent patterns. The marks aren't just wear, they're records of rhythmic covenantal effort. Machetes retain hymns of balance from their use. The material world gets saturated with this collective intention.
And all this embodied, synchronized labor feeds directly into their governing philosophy, right? Joy as organizational algorithm, JAOA.
Exactly. Joy isn't a byproduct, it's kinetic policy. It's the ultimate quality control metric. If a task, a process, a decision starts to actively dim the heart of the participants, it fails quality control. It needs immediate revision or cessation.
Because the formula.
Political alignment is found through synchronized breathing, shared work, shared like GDP. They see those as measuring the raw.
Okay, resonance. This must connect back to that shared vibration idea.
It does. How many hearts home with it? It's about the felt harmony across the community, across kin lines. You measure it by the collective ability to synchronize breath, movement, even laughter. If a new policy or a building design just doesn't resonate, if people can't integrate it easily into their rhythm, it has low tech spin and won't last. Downpour is empirically false, no matter how logical it sounds on paper.
It's
Tree and plumbing, they demand both. The DT axis, the practice of etymological hybridization to its own specific microclimate culture needs. They develop their own localized hyperorganon lexicon.
So Kinema shares the principles, the operating system framework, but not the specific applications.
Exactly. Data transfer happens through stories, shared meals, maybe apprenticeships, not through standardized reports or franchising. It's about inspiring others to use the tools to build their own specific prometotopia, grounded in their own place.
Because the core thesis is that being is buildable.
Yes. And the principles of flatness, reciprocity, joyful maintenance, they believe those are potentially universal. But the expression must be hyperlocal. Anyone with bricks, breath, and a bit of grace, as they say, can join the compilation effort.
And the ultimate goal, the final synthesis of this whole project, is described as eschatological maintenance.
It's a beautiful grounding concept. It means rejecting the drama of apocalypse, the idea of a sudden end-times event, and replacing it with the sacred destiny of continuous upkeep, continuous repair. Salvation isn't a future rescue. It's measured right now by a repair continuity index.
How well does care flow from one pair of hands to the next, one generation to the next?
That's the measure. The revolution won't be a spectacle. It will be handcrafted day by day, measured by the rhythm of the hammer, and sung in harmony during the work.
This has been, well, a truly mind-bending deep dive into a system that really forces you to rethink almost everything: physics, faith, politics, language. The Kenemagoran experiment, this hyperorganon, it suggests that profound change is possible right now through this radical linguistic creativity and this deep commitment to covenantal maintenance.
It really embodies that core delta T22 idea. Text existence, text reciprocity in two. To be is to constantly give back, with joy, the energy and care you receive from the entire metabolism of the world around you.
Which leaves us with a final thought, a provocation for you, the listener. If the Kenemagoran system measures its success by things like the community's shared chuckle per capita and its repair continuity index, what metric is currently running your own life?
Whether it's in your work, your family, how you track your health, might it need an infusion of joy entropy? A dose of that playful resilience?
What would ensure its long-term durability and resonance, not just its efficiency? Maybe take a page from praxis or haptognosis.
Don't just analyze your life from the outside. Metabolize with it. Touch it. What's the prometopia you can start building with your own hands today?
This has been the deep dive. Thanks for metabolizing with us.